This is Lee House 777. Do you see this video? This is put up by Ryan of the House of Kenil, and this is Nazi pink skin moral supremacy. He's upset because Argon got made black, and he should be upset because they gave him that cloud mane. He said this is the worst thing that's happening because they made Argon the way that he was intended. You see backwards United States. Let's see what he got to say.
This story here is insane. Aragorn is now black, according to Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast race swaps Aragorn for Magic the Gathering's upcoming Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth.
Now keep in mind that Peter of the House of Jackson race swapped Aragorn with Viggo Mortensen, a phenomenal actor, by the way, because Aragorn was described as swarthy. He was black in the book. See his flag? This is a supremacist.
6 months, Lord of the Rings fans have been bracing for what Amazon is going to do with the Rings of Power series, because they've told us over and over again they're not going to respect Tolkien, they're not going to respect the lore, they're not going to respect the world of Middle-earth. They're going to do it because this is not about entertaining people. This is not about honoring what Tolkien wrote. Instead, it's about identity politics. It's about their agenda, and it's about taking this thing that so many people love and turning it into something completely different.
By this, he's talking about Caucasian or pink-skinned mortals, as if they were the only ones who were into Lord of the Rings and those books. Different races from all over the planet has been about this. This is a Nazi, and J.R.Tolkien was against Nazis. That was supposed to be his take on Sauron and Saruman and Hitler and stuff like that. So a supremacist, a racial supremacist like this man here should not be even reading Lord of the Rings, and nobody else should either if they're not about racial unities, because that's what the whole point of elves, dwarves, humans, and mortals coming together of Eomer, the Rohirrim, and those of Gondor, the Westerlings, and the elves, and the dwarves of the mountains. But Peter Jackson in the movie made those characters all pink-skinned mortals, portraying like a hillbilly, a country, or the skateboard in the form of Legolas, hillbilly in the form of Gimli, son of Gloin, and Aragorn supposed to be the Midwestern, rugged, pink-skinned mortal, and Gandalf the older veteran. He race swapped them all because those names, Gondor is supposed to be Gita, the tree. They're the only nation on the planet. Israel is the only one who has a tree, the tree of living, the fig tree. Now, Tolkien did grow up in the Nubian lands, so talk about discrediting his work. Peter Jackson discredited his work, even though he was inspired by Spike Lee and Steven Spielberg. But racist pink-skinned mortals don't want to talk about that, like this one here. A backwards America, a backwards United States.
If you're taking this thing called Lord of the Rings, maybe you should stick to what's been given to you. Maybe you should stick to the lore and what everybody told you about these characters.
Next, he says that they should do what they're told, follow instructions, and stick to the lore of what Lotr. So let's go take a look at J.R.R. Tolkien description of Aragorn, because they added the yellow mane and Azul pupils to Legolas and Thranduil, but they made sure that the only blackened person at first was a savage, bearded and wild hobbit. That should be more of an insult. So let's take a look at Aragorn. Elessar, son of Anathon. Tolkien never described his elves as wheat skin. That was Peter Jackson's doing. But this guy said that he's respecting the labors of J.R. Tolkien, who was against racism, who grew up in the Nubian lands in Africa. Here, Samwise Gamgee was supposed to be a brown-skinned person anyway from the beginning, but he wasn't. He was played by the veteran actor Sean Astin, who played in like father, like son, starring Kirk Cameron, played by Kirk Cameron and Dudley of the House of Moore. But Samwise Gamgee was supposed to be brown-skinned, and he's a hobbit. Eomer may have been pink-skinned. The Haradin were supposed to be brown-skinned people, according to the descriptions of the books. But this guy, this racial supremacist, is talking with his passion, but not with facts. Peter Jackson changed it to all pink-skinned actors because of his deal with a supremacist group who financed the movie. But Tolkien said that the hobbits were supposed to be like aboriginals, and they were dark skin, brown skin to be exact. It says it right there. Nut brown skin and brown hands was his race of the hobbits of Soundwave Scoungy. There is also the Beorians of the House of Beor, and Beor was a shape-shifting animal person in the Hobbit movie that turned to beast, and he was supposed to be a brown-skinned person, but it wasn't. It was a pink-skinned actor there too. They're not basing this man who's arguing this statements, and many of those people out there are supremacists, and they want something to believe in, even if it's a lie. I'm not exactly blaming for that, but the stuff that they're grabbing at, you can't build a foundation off of lies, it'll crumble down. You have to start with the truth. And the truth is that J.R. Tolkien was not a racist, and he was not about a Caucasian supremacy or a pink-skinned mortal supremacy. He was about the wrongdoings that happened by the supremacist group Nazis. And now newer type of supremacists of Nazi-like, because they're not even really about what Hitler was. These new types of United States supremacist groups want to attack stuff like Kal-El, these Steve Rogers, even Lord of the Rings, and want to turn it into a new engine, which these towards are also against that kind of supremacy. And they're going by the movies instead of by the books, but they're speaking with these lies. It's up to you people to say it truthfully. Several moments in J.R. Tolkien's books, The Rangers, where Aragorn was from, the Dunedain, were described as having a rather dark complexion. And in the animated movie that came out with Aragorn, he had a light brownish skin. Aragorn had a light brownish skin. Color. That Aragorn was already supposed to have been a brown-skinned person. And Peter Jackson was aware of this. And I'm thinking you fanatics of LOTR is aware of this too. And the elves were based off the Anunnaki, who weren't pink-skinned mortals. But Peter Jackson's followers turned that into Scandinavian. And what reason did Peter Jackson leave out the men of Irador, who were brown-skinned, mahogany? But Aragorn is described as mahogany skin. Because the Dunedain were descendants of Beor. And Beor had brown skin. And the endurers of the downfall of the Numenor were the Beorian descent, as their descriptions match the people of the house of Beor, Erebon, Grey Pupils, etc. Now, several moments, the Rangers, the Dunedain, descendants of Beor, are described as dark complexion. Aragorn was already supposed to be a brown-skinned person. The men of Bree were said to be related to the swarthy skin. Swarthy skin. Doodlings. And the doodlings themselves did the deeds of Saruman, it turned out. The Dunedain wore brown-skinned people, but in the movie you see all pink-skinned mortals. If there's any racial supremacy, this is initiated by Peter Jackson's greed and desperation to get this classic story out. Good intention, but misguided. So the question is, are you people following Peter Jackson's and saying that that they're discrediting it? Or are you following J.R. Tolkien, who Peter Jackson was attempting to honor? Because you should be following J.R. Tolkien's description. Aragorn is brown. Now, future writers, modern ones in the 21s, say that J.R. Tolkien never described race when they found that Aragorn was brown-skinned. That he did this intentionally towards racial unity. But he did describe Aragorn as having a dark complexion and swarthy. So let's sell something here. And it's not just swarthy, not swarthy behavior, swarthy skin. So let's see what that means. Swarthy means dark skin. Tall, dark, and handsome. Find swarthy complexion attractive. Olive. Olives aren't pink, and olives aren't wheat that has snow. Weather being darkened by the sun. So let's take an image at a swarthy person, a swarthy being. This is swarthy. Tawny skin. Thomas of the House of Fairfax. That's swarthy. A blackened person, but not a Nubian, not a Congo and Zaire and Somalia. Ordinary complexion. That doesn't fit the description of swarthy. A wheat complexion. No. Let's see, swarthy. Swarthy complexion. And this is a description of Aragorn. This is swarthy complexion. And given the names like Eletsor and all that. Aragorn, by the way, is a name of Caesar Borgia. That's the reason. And Aragorn didn't have a beard. Remember that. And he certainly didn't have azul pupils. They were supposed to be gray. But Viggo Mortensen had azul pupils, courtesy of Peter Jackson, as most of the cast did. And let us not forget about the the Europeans were actually like that at first. Many of them were like that, I should say. So it is in keeping with the Aragorn being this way. These supremacists are using LTR and any stuff that they could grab to say that it was an all pink skin Caucasian reality or planet, and that's not the accurate representation of history. But if you guys actually read, you would see this for yourselves instead of being blind by your emotions of racial supremacy or racism without wanting to say your racism. Now, Peter Jackson himself is to blame because he was desperate with a good intention to get that movie out, including when everybody else rejected him and he felt he had no choice but to get backed by a supremacist group as long as he made minor changes, which seemed to affect many of these lazy-minded people growing up in the age of Cali. These minor changes would add yellow mane, azul pupil to characters that were never described as that way. And olives aren't, they're not snow-hued and they're not pink olives. And there's certainly been no green people in there, so the other form of an olive is edible or darkened, swarthy, tawny. Aragorn's been a blackened person. Instead, this guy here just made him look like Caesar Borgia, the same one who tried to change the one from Nazareth or Bethlehem into his image. Aragorn didn't have a beard. Where's his gray pupils?
knows a disgustingly woke company has now changed Aragorn black. They've race swapped Aragorn. Like, if you could make up the most outlandish thing that someone could possibly do in Lord of the Rings with their adaptation, that might be right up there. And
so he's saying that the worst, this pink skin mortal with that beard, that demonic beard, said that the worst thing that someone could do is make a character who's described as a blackened person black. The worst thing would be probably to add violations, same gender laying engagements, or homosexuality, but he doesn't see that as worse, or giving these characters breasts when they didn't have breasts, or a phallus when they didn't have a phallus. Is there any complaints made against Peter Jackson's take on being woke when he made Eowyn become the ruler of Rohan? Because it was supposed to be Eomer, son of Eomon, in the book. But the worst thing for this, apparently Lil Dick, angry, jealous, and envious of everybody better than him, pink skin mortal, is that Aragorn's black.
will all have the flavor and history of the trilogy. Man, you dove really deep in the lore to find out that Aragorn was fucking black, didn't you? Holy shit. Imagine even pretending like you take this seriously.
Outright racism. And even more so, did anybody notice that he turned the United States backwards? And he's adding red and Ebon to say bring hell to the United States. Is anybody looking at that? And the bear towards the Satario, the hairy ones, the demons. This one will be closer to the orcs, the Urukai, the Giants, than to the elves and to the Westerlings and to the men of Middle Earth.
Feel for the world, the characters, the weapons, the locations, and the story moments are going to be intensely familiar, but fresh and relevant to a wider audience. Yes, there were no black Lord of the Rings fans before this, just like with Rings of Power. No black Lord of the Rings fans out there until you made it dwarf black and until you made it elf black. Now they'll all just be coming in. Same thing with Aragorn. Now that you changed Aragorn to a black man, now all black people are allowed to be Lord of the Rings fans. That's actually how some of these people think.
So anybody could tell you that that's racial battering. There was many millions. I think all those millions of LOTR fans of the Two Towers, the Silmarillion, and the Chronicles of Middle Earth, and the Valinor, even with Eluthavidar, they were all different races who read this book. But this young mortal who grew up, and he just came across it from most likely Orlando Bloom's and John Rice of the House of Davies, and Ian McKellen's and Peter of the House of Jackson's and Liv Tyler's and Hugo of the House of Weavings and Sean of the House of Ashton and Carl of the House of Urban portrayal of Lord of the Rings. And he's upset. He's upset because of a skin color. I think he just needs he's trying to rally up people to be racist like him. Be careful. And he's clearly showing red and Ebon to lead, could corrupt the nation, lead to hell. There's a couple of them out here, but now they're outright saying it. And he's upset because the person who he believed in was a blackened person. He'll probably be bothered to know that Steve Rogers and Kal-El and many of those other comic book characters, Odin's son, were drawn off of a blackened person. This is what a loser looks like.
As stewards very seriously, and every decision about characters has been made with deep reverence to the original. Yeah, bull fucking shit. With that in mind, together, we set out to make a set that follows two guiding principles: diversity and originality. So, no, not loyalty to the lore, not loyalty to Tolkien, not giving fans what they expect. No, diversity and originality. This is absolutely insane. Lord of the Rings is about different people coming together, finding strength in their diversity. We want to make the story fresh and relevant to an even wider audience. Millions of books has Lord of the Rings sold. It's a pretty wide audience, and you are changing it and destroying it. This right here, this is now Aragorn, according to Wizards of the Coast in Lord of the Rings. It doesn't stop. The insanity doesn't stop. Nothing is safe.
His insanity doesn't. He's saying it doesn't stop him. He's laughing, but he's attacking with racial slurs and his anger because his champion was a darker skin than him. But he just race shouldn't even have mattered about at least that part, the contents of their character. I guess he'll be bothered. People like him are also on Google and Wikipedia trying to change stuff too, because he tried to change somebody tried to change, this is recent, like in 21 Twilights ago, tried to change Lug into a wheat. They put in capital letters. They rewrote the history on. So don't trust too much what you read on Reddit or Google, and now they're, or excuse me, Wikipedia rather. The older sources describe Lug as bronze skin. Man, he has a problem with that. I can see the reason. The majority of people do understand that Lord of the Rings is about different races that's coming together to stop evil and wickedness. Actually, they're actually against the House of Apollo, those who bear the crucifix, because that wedding band is orchestrated by their ceremony. But he's not addressing that. No Christian, no follower of the House of Apollo or a crucifix will even be into Lord of the Rings, because it's actually against that religion. This is a supremacist.
This are going to try to continue to infiltrate and destroy everything. But luckily, Lord of the Rings fans, at least in the case of Amazon, and they're speaking out about this too, will not sit down and take this without a fight. This is insanity. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below about blackface Aragorn and how they've race swapped him in Magic the Gathering. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you.
So make a dislike button towards racial nonsense, what he's spewing. I'll see it was facts and true, but just remember something. Adolf Hitler did not have yellow mane and his little pupils, and he was about racial supremacy too. So he didn't think that this little scum is even worthy to be in the reach. You guys got to use your brains, but don't let your emotions blind you. Yeah, there are racial groups out there, even brown skinned ones, like this loser who is trying to promote you guys to fight his battles for him. He just mad because he can't get a maiden no more or laid. So don't you guys become the losers. Study and back that up with facts. Stand with the lead. Stand with the truth. Stand with love. This is Lead House 777. Tolkien said that evil and the wicked can only copy. They can't generate, and they cannot make, and they only corrupt and ruin. And that's exactly what Peter Jackson, this Keno, and he got one other person on here complaining about skin and their video game claiming people, which is not really a problem in itself. But these two people are full of a rage that they're scared that they're going to lose what makes them valuable. So they're jealousy and envy. They're trying to make you all fight for them. In any race, in any group, that's called a punk, because they're too weak to stand on their own feet. It's very improper for spoiled brats such as that to go attack, try to rival people up for their own personal problem. They have a problem with it only. They have a problem with it. And they try to get all these other people to rile behind them. Tolkien wouldn't stand for it. And fans of LOTR, multiracial fans, multi-people, different statuses, will not go for it. Will not be supporting them. So stand against the racism, just as Tolkien stood against the racism. This is Lee House 777.